Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ashley Malone. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Google Drive, including Drive Enterprise. And this is my colleague, Raghu.
Hey, everyone. My name is Raghu. I lead global sales strategy for Drive. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming in.
And today, we're going to be walking you through how to improve the number one factor affecting your profitability. So first, don't worry, we'll tell you what it is and why it's so important. Then we'll talk about a tough choice that IT leaders often face when they're considering a new content management and collaboration solution. And then the bulk of this session is going to be focused on how Drive Enterprise can help you both improve that all-important factor, but also quell some of the fears that you might have as an IT leader about making a switch in the first place. So without further ado, no more bearing the lead. The number one factor affecting your profitability is collaboration. So this graph is from a study that we did with Raconteur that shows that a majority, 56%, of C-level executives think that collaborative activities are the number one factor affecting their profitability. Number one. There's actually a more recent study from this year, 2019, from Deloitte that says that 85% of C-level executives rate collaboration as important or very important to the success of their business. So, pretty big deal. Research also shows that companies that promote collaboration are 5 times as likely to be high-performing. And who doesn't want to be more high-performing, right? So, but why is this? Why does collaboration make such a big difference for business performance? So, there are a few reasons. First, better collaboration leads to higher efficiency, especially on teams and for large, complex projects that span multiple teams. Second, it means your workforce is more informed because they're literally connected to more people, more content, more data. And lastly, and most importantly, it leads to higher quality output due to collective knowledge. So it has been well documented that diversity in thought leads to better ideas. So the more people that you can work with and the more effectively you can do it, the better your work becomes. So collaboration is clearly essential when it comes to good business performance, and individual employees value it just as much. So studies show that globally, well over half of employees think that, number one, they agree, they think that teamwork enhances business performance. Number two, they think that teamwork is more valuable than individual work. And number three, they actually think that they work better when they work with others. So hopefully you can see that collaboration is way more than a check the box, either you have it or you don't. Better collaboration is good for people, it's good for business, and it can be a massive revenue multiplier. But we know that existing solutions aren't really doing it justice. They're not really helping you maximize collaboration the way that you need. So as an example, how often do you or your employees find yourselves in this situation? Right? You're looking for a document to do your work and you can't find it anywhere. It's not where you thought it would be, it's not where it's supposed to be, and so you kind of start this mad dash, asking all of your coworkers who might know where it is if they could send it to you, if they've seen it, right? How familiar is this exchange? I know that before I worked for Google, my previous company, it was an almost daily occurrence for me, right? But can we really say that this is collaboration? And it's actually even worse than this because content is constantly evolving. So you don't just have to find a file. You have to find the right version of a file. Now, I'm pretty sure I don't need to tell this group of people how big a problem versioning and version conflict is, but I'm going to anyways. So it is an alarmingly common issue. 96% of global workers have trouble finding the most recent version of a document. How can anyone get anything done if they can't even find the thing they're supposed to be working on in the first place, right? This is the work around work that gets in the way of actually getting things done. And it eats into the time and energy that you could be spending using the creative, strategic, analytical parts of your brain. You know, the parts that your company actually pays you for. So because this is such a widespread issue, as you'd expect, there are tons of solutions out there promising to fix it, to offer better content collaboration and better content management. The biggest of which is, of course, Microsoft. So what you're looking at here is deployment and active usage data across 4 of Microsoft's biggest products. And what we can see is while their solutions are definitely deployed, they're hardly used at all. Now, why is that? Why is there such a discrepancy between deployment and active usage? Well, I've got a number of theories, but maybe it's because only 11% of Microsoft users consider their SharePoint project a success. Or maybe it's because in a recent O365 poll, 79% of respondents rated OneDrive for Business just a 12 out of 100 when it comes to value. A 12. Or maybe it's because this is the mental gymnastics that a Microsoft user has to go through anytime they want to save a file. So how big is the file? Is it going to be shared, internal or external? Is it for a specific team, long-term, short-term, and on and on? All of these questions that they have to ask themselves before they even save a file. And this, by the way, is based on Microsoft's own support documentation, their recommendations for when you should save what where. So no wonder these solutions aren't adopted. They hurt more than they help. And personally, if I was in IT, just looking at all of these disparate repositories would make me pretty nervous about security. That's a lot of different places to protect your data. So many companies think that they're offering their workforce a good solution, but shadow IT usage tells a different story. So well over half, the overwhelming majority of employees use unapproved apps at work, 80%. This is probably not news to you, but it tells you that something's broken, right? And for us at Drive, we've been able to determine that a full 77% of companies in the S&P 500 have employees using consumer Drive at work. And they're using Drive because they understand the value of real collaboration, right? What we were talking about in the beginning. So, of course, this puts you as an IT leader into a really difficult position. Do you prioritize improving collaboration, which likely requires another solution, and a ton of time, energy, and maybe even money to move all of your people and your content over to that solution? Or do you stick with what you've got because it's safe, the costs are known, and it doesn't require the pain of change? So to help better illustrate this decision, let's think about it another way, a more fun way, because it's really very similar to the decision that you would face if you were considering whether or not to buy a new car. So think of your workforce, your employees, as the passenger, and you know they need to go faster. They need to go a lot faster. But right now, you've got a standard four-door sedan, and it's probably beige. It's fine in a lot of ways, but not exactly known for speed. But when you look at cars that are known for speed, like say a sports car, you get nervous. Is it safe? You definitely care about it being safe. Isn't it too expensive? Probably can't even afford that. Don't worry, I can't either. But so the sedan isn't working the best for your passenger. But do you take on the big decision to get a sports car? Or do you play it safe and stick with the sedan? So let's look at the key factors that are at play in this decision. First, of course, there's speed, which is an area you know you need to be better at. Your workforce, your passenger is telling you they desperately need it, right? Then there's safety, which is something you know you can't compromise on because your cargo is too precious. And lastly, there's affordability. Is a sports car even feasible financially? Do you have the budget for it? And it's a sports car. So we all know that it's going to need an outrageous amount of service and maintenance too. So what do you do? Well, the dichotomy shown here is actually a false choice. A sports car isn't your only option. It's not the only fast car in the world. There are lots of other cars that can give you greater speed while still giving you what you need when it comes to safety and affordability. So I wanted to take a moment to walk you guys through that analogy because it really perfectly maps to the decision that you're faced with when it comes to considering a new content management and collaboration solution. So clearly, Microsoft is the sedan. It's got some issues. It's fine, but it's got some issues, right? You could use some performance enhancements there. What you'd really like is a solution that helps your employees be more collaborative and productive, so helps them go faster, right? You want a solution that is secure by the most rigorous enterprise standards, so super safe. And you want a solution that's priced reasonably and that's easy to adopt, so it's affordable. So what we want to show you today is that Drive is the car you need, which, because of our name, works out just about the best that any analogy ever could have. So this is what we're going to be going through today, is showing you that with Drive, you get that kind of security, reliability, and management that you know you can't compromise on. You also get an easy transition over and a ton of interoperability with your existing tech, especially Microsoft. And you get that kind of collaboration that really adds value to your business, which is what you're looking for in the first place. So these are the 3 areas we're going through today, and we're intentionally going through them in this order. So we're following a path that kind of goes from necessity to added value. So starting with your biggest check the box, the thing that you know you need to get right so that you don't get fired, to making sure it's even feasible for your company to make a switch like this in terms of cost, migration, adoption, interoperability. And then finally going into the thing you know your workforce really needs to do better, the thing that can unlock outsized value for your company and maybe even help improve your profitability. But before we really dive into things, what are we talking about here? What is Drive Enterprise? What's included? So Drive Enterprise is a standalone offer from G Suite that has 3 major components. First, robust content management with Drive, naturally. The best real-time collaborative creation tools on the market in docs, sheets, slides, forms, sites, Keep. And lastly, all the enterprise features you need to protect and manage all your organizational knowledge. And that last point is important. If you're only familiar with us in a personal capacity from your personal life, you might be surprised just how much we've bolstered our enterprise offering with the security and management features you need. And Raghu is going to go over all of those features in depth in a second. But to kind of sum up, the way I like to think about Drive Enterprise, an easy way to think about Drive Enterprise, is it's identical to G Suite Enterprise minus Gmail, Calendar, Meet, and what was formerly called Google Plus has now been rebranded to Currents. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Raghu to talk about security.
Thank you, Ashley. Hey, everyone. Like I said, my name is Raghu. I lead global sales strategy for Drive Enterprise. And one of the reasons why I get super excited about talking about the product is the security feature. So if you see me jumping around a little bit too much, I'll calm down. But hopefully you'll feel the same energy as well. So the way we think about security is in layers, right? You have to go all the way from the base layer to the final point of exfiltration and protect every single piece of that chain as such. So what I'm going to talk about in the next 15, 20 minutes is kind of walk you through what we have done from an infrastructure standpoint to make that happen, and then go down into what happens at the user level, at the file level as well, and where the security features actually kick in and help overall. So the first thing to know is we've actually put a lot of our own resources and investments into building this global network. So if you see all the blue dots and the blue and the white dots with the blue outline as such, those are all investment points across the world that we have places of presence or POPs as such. And then all the black dots essentially are other places that we have also invested and have infrastructure in place. So it's incredibly global. It hits almost every single part of the ecosystem in terms of where you might have users, where you might have clients, etc. And that's like 0.0 of where we start with the entire thing, right? On top of that, we then also own a lot of the network itself. That means the entire chain, the entire pipeline overall. And there's a big reason why we do this. The big reason why we have invested this much into building this network out is the fact that the more you own this network, the more you can actually guarantee performance, the more you can guarantee security, right? So that's where the first point of investment as such goes. And I think the number, and don't quote me on this, I think the number is around $40 or $45 billion spent in the last 3 years building this network out. So one big reason why we do that, well, 2 big reasons. One big reason that we do that is all of our clients depend on us, almost hand over the keys of making sure that the house is secure to us as the first point. And the second point is them themselves, right? So the second point is how do you trust us as a consumer product if you don't trust us as an enterprise product, and vice versa. So we want to hit both of those points, and that's where this investment goes in super deep. The other piece of this is because we own all of this network, what we are able to do is be the only provider out there that has the entire data pipeline encrypted. That means the data that goes through our pipelines are encrypted at rest and at transit, right? And that changes the game quite a bit because then your man-in-the-middle attacks, your data exfiltration issues, all of that becomes slightly less of an issue. And then we talk about how we essentially boost that in the end as well. So this sounds great, but let's go a little deeper. And you'll see me nerd out, so stop me if it's too much. But the first point, let's start from the right side of the screen, if you will. The first point is the physical security itself. So all of our data centers, because they're owned by us, have certain amount of security requirements that are built in. People have to badge in. There are people who we know. There's a whole bunch of security features on the physical side itself. Then we go into the Titan security chip, which every single one of these data centers is equipped with, and every single person is equipped with. The Titan security key is actually super cool because it is a FIDO standard YubiKey equivalent device or like hardware as such, right? So that means the only way to get through is if you have the security key in place. And if somebody's, let's say, going into a phishing-based URL or something like that and tries to log in, if you have a FIDO key in there, there's no way that they can log in because there's a true interface, one-to-one out there. The third piece of it is what we just talked about, which is data encryption itself. So if the data is encrypted at rest and at transit, it changes the game quite a lot in terms of where the issues come or might come as such. And then we own the undersea cables, and then finally the secure cloud endpoint. So the Chrome browser and the Chrome device as such are inherently built that way. So we build this hardware all the way from the data center to the final point to make sure that that's super secure. Now, what happens if you're not using Chrome browsers or Chrome devices as such? That's where Drive has essentially now been equipped with what we call context-aware access. So you can do endpoint management, mobile device management, things of that nature, and add along with that this Titan key, which is also available, and that helps close that gap altogether as much as it can be, right? So any questions here in terms of the design of the security infrastructure, anything of that sort? No? Exciting? Hopefully, a little bit. So the reason why we do this on the other side is that the Google network has a lot of people depending on it, not just our clients on the enterprise side, but also on the consumer side. So if you look at the numbers out there, we have more than 25% of the internet's traffic is running through our network. So it's a huge responsibility, and we take it seriously. We defend almost 1 billion plus Gmail accounts and Chrome users overall. Again, a huge part of why we have to do this, and we do this well. And we stop spam, we stop malware, all of that right at the end, exfiltration points, the exigency points as such. And so that huge responsibility that our clients and our consumers have essentially bestowed on us, we take it seriously, and that's why that infrastructure goes a long way. And then we look at encryption itself, and this is the fun part. The way we do encryption is every single file, every single data log as such is sharded, right? And then all of those shards are encrypted with their own encryption key. On top of that, the encryption key is then encrypted as well. And then the two different points which are encrypted and sharded together get stored in multiple different data centers that we saw in that map earlier when we started talking about this. So the way to get to data, even if something gets compromised at the physical level, is near improbable, is what we want to design this as, right? And that's the guarantee. So a lot of times what we do is because of the structure, because of the way the infrastructure is created overall, we are able to guarantee 99+% uptimes and a certain level of security and things of that nature. And that's why this is built the way it is. And then on top of that, when we go into Drive itself, there's a lot of different solutions, a lot of different opportunities that we now have because of the infrastructure that exists, right? One of them is the security center itself. So this is built into Drive's admin console. So it has a few different elements. It has the dashboard. It has the way for you to do reporting the way you want it. But the most exciting, interesting thing here is that because we have the ability to use our machine learning algorithms in conjunction with this, we can also do proactive data protection for you, which means that let's say you're in a scenario where somebody in your company is suddenly downloading a whole bunch of files. Because of the fact that we know what's happening within the tenant for the most part, we know that that is not a normal behavior. That is abnormal behavior, which means that we can then proactively tell somebody within your super administrator group or the group itself that, hey, looks like there's something happening that is not supposed to have happened. Go check it out, right? And there's a lot of these opportunities that we can essentially construct and help you understand before the threat becomes a reality. So the whole point is to stop it before it becomes a big problem, right? And so the proactiveness of this essentially goes towards that. And there's, of course, a lot of actionable insights and recommendations that get, again, brought into Security Center so that you can decide what you want to adopt and what you don't want to adopt based on the best practices, the recommendations that come in there. On top of that, you layer on data loss prevention. Now, when we talk about data loss prevention in general, everybody knows what we are talking about, right? Like social security numbers, credit card numbers, passports, all kinds of different private or protected data as such. That's great. A lot of people do it. We do it as well. Perfect. Happy world. Let's go one step forward, right? Which is, how do you make it even more powerful? And that is through the machine learning algorithm that we have and a few other technologies. So what we do is containerize within Drive. We go and scan every single file that you have. It can be CAD diagrams. It can be Photoshop files. It can be regular PDFs, anything at all which is not protected, zip files, etc. And because we're able to scan it, we know what exists in that file in terms of data. So if you have, let's say, company confidential as a phrase, you can essentially go in and create a rule which says any file that has the words company confidential, make sure that this particular data loss prevention rule gets applied to it automatically. We go one step further from there, which means we have OCR technology also built into this. So if you have any files that are essentially scanned, they will also get the same level of protection by default built into the solution. And that goes a long way as well. And then this piece is interesting because there's obviously archiving and data retention policies that you want to set, and those are all built into the solution. But on top of that, we are also layering e-discovery solutions into the package itself. So what that means is, unfortunately, if there's an instance where your legal team needs to go in and figure out who did what and why, or there's a legal matter that needs to be taken care of, generally for companies, that's tens of thousands of dollars for every single legal matter that goes in, right? Instead of doing that, you can use Drive's e-discovery solution, which is built in, and go and do all of that work very easily through a UI, through an interface that you set just for your legal team or for someone who's trusted to go in and do that work as such. And that also does two things. It gives you the capability, but also lets you do a separation of responsibility as such and make it easy to do it. And then it's designed for teams, which means essentially everybody here, I'm sure, uses some method of identity management. It might be Microsoft AD, might be Okta, might be something else. We obviously go in and work with all of those solutions so that you can adopt all of those security groups that you have, bring it into Drive by default, and then all the sharing and management at the group level, at the team level, can be automatically brought in and managed through Drive. That means if your finance team has documentation that should not go out of the finance team's area as well as such, our shared Drive, which is what we call it within the Drive interface as such, allows you to say that if the finance team has this particular shared drive, nobody outside of that finance team can get access to it. And if somebody wants to access the documentation within that, you can also protect it so that they don't get the capability of downloading the file, printing the file, sharing the file with somebody else without explicit permission. With Chromium-based browsers, because we can do DOM-based identification, you can also prevent them from taking screenshots from the device itself. So that's an extended level of protection that comes in. And then at the file level itself, there's basic things that you might expect, which is like set expiration. Ashley does this to me a lot. Project's over, no longer have access to this file. Oops, gone, right? But that's the right way to do it because the project's over. You can do that internally and externally when you share a file, set a certain expiration. After that, the person doesn't get access to the file by default, and that's a good thing. And of course, the disabling the ability for those people to then download, print, or share the file, copy the file in its own instance as well, is not just available at the shared drive level, it's also available at the individual file level. So you can decide, or you can let your designates decide what kind of capabilities, what kind of policies you want to follow within the company as such, right? And then all the fun stuff is also taken care of. So if you need to be GDPR compliant, if you need to be FedRAMP moderate compliant, PCI DSS, all the fun acronyms that everybody has to deal with, we take on that work as well and make sure that you have compliant solutions that you can use by default, right? And that's a big part of it, HIPAA, etc. And if we don't, let us know, and we're probably working on it, and we'll let you know when it'll show up. And then a lot of other fun stuff, other fun tools, data regioning. If you have folks within the European Union who need to access it but want to keep the data at the European Union level, that's built in by default. You can easily use that. Same thing with North America, of course. Mobile device management. So if you are spending a lot of money doing CASB-like solutions, a lot of that capability comes built into Drive and overall Google Cloud as such, because you can manage endpoints, you can manage networks, access through that. Those kind of solutions are also built in. Investigation tools and a lot of other things. So that's all the fun security stuff that I get really excited about. But then before I move on, any questions on any of the security pieces here? Yes, sir. It has a certain fidelity, so yeah. Do you have
a model where customers can also provide a key?
Yeah, depending on where you need to use it, there are opportunities for you to use your own client-side key and encryption and all of that as well. Yeah, so by default, we are not allowed to access the data anyways because it's enterprise, right? But if you want to do that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. All of this is great, but if you're not creating a solution that is easy to adopt and easy to use, this all goes away again, right? So think about the slide that Ashley showed with the adoption versus deployment ratio. A lot of those are real problems that people face. So that's where we have done some interesting things that I would love to talk about and hear your feedback on as well. The first thing I want to talk about is, it's kind of the elephant in the room whenever you talk about IT solutions, which is pricing, right? How is the pricing set up? So we have two models that we've created exactly for those situations. We have the committed model at $12 per user per month, which comes with space altogether. And then we have consumption models, which are based on a different pricing mechanism. The way we do these two models is essentially because companies have two different models that they follow, right? There's folks who are OpEx sensitive, so you want to know exactly how much you have to spend every year, and you want to account for it, budget for it. Your CFO probably really cares about that, right? And so the committed model works really well for them. And then there are people who are more CapEx related. It's more intense programs that are for the future, building for it. And so that's where the consumption model comes in. And you can essentially decide who wants what and where, and then just pay for that. And so, before I go into this, one other thing about the consumption model that I want to talk about real quick is we only charge you for active usage. So if you have 1,000 people who are using Drive, but only 700 of them have actually done anything meaningful within Drive itself, you only get charged for the 700, right? And that makes it really interesting because you're never paying for a person who's not using it. And so the deployment versus usage issue completely goes away because you won't get charged for it, right? Simple as that. And then this is everybody's biggest pain when you're moving on to a new solution. Who takes care of migration? It's generally you, right? You pay for it, or you get a consultant in to do it, and then you have to pay for tools on top of it. And there are places where those consultants make a lot of difference. Change management, risk mitigation, all of that. Great job. They should continue to do it. But the tools aspect is what we want to relieve a little bit. So about 2 years ago, we went and bought a company called AppBridge and brought it in and rebuilt it on the Google structure as such, infrastructure, calling it G Suite Migrate. And so that is available by default anytime you want to move on to Drive. So then you don't have to pay for the tools to get the infrastructure moved. You just have to pay for the change management or just do it yourself if you have the leaders inside your company. Then we come into UX. So how many folks here have used Drive or Gmail or things like that in the consumer ecosystem? Okay, a few, almost everyone. Okay. This is generally indicative. About 70-75% of the market uses us on the consumer side. Same thing, 65-70% of universities also use G Suite. So if you're bringing in new people, new employees, one of the big issues that you face and that they face is that the first thing they have to relearn is how to be productive, right? Not at what they're supposed to do, but how to be productive on a day-to-day basis in your own company, because tools are different. Lotus, Microsoft, etc., are things they've never been exposed to. So that entire barrier goes away. So all of their time is going to be spent on making sure that they are learning what they need to do at work, not learning how to work as such, right? That's a big difference. The other thing is we think of a good UX experience as great security. The better your UX is, the less mistakes people make. So that's an investment in security as well. And finally, this is a silly thing that I like to say, so someone please laugh. But good UX is a little bit like shower pressure. And I had this issue today in the morning. So you might have a shower in your hotel. That is all right. It'll get the job done, but it's never satisfactory. It's never satisfying. So good UX is a little bit like good shower pressure. As long as that happens and you get the experience you need, it kind of changes things quite a bit. You want to use the tool again. That's a good thing, right? Thank you. One person laughed. Appreciate it. The other side of this is interoperability. And the reason why we put a lot of stress, a lot of investments into this is because you have a lot of tools in your IT investment portfolio, and you want to make sure that data goes from well-thought-out solutions to well-thought-out solutions. So we do a lot of interoperability work so that we work with SAP, Salesforce, DocuSign, Slack, all these Cisco, all these different companies that you might have made investments in. A good tool, a good solution should make sure that your IT investments are enhanced, not reduced. And so I'm going to take you through one or two of these examples real quick, just so you see what we're talking about. The first one is SAP. So moving data from SAP, which has a lot of financial information, to, let's say, do some sort of data analysis work, things of that nature, generally means that you're downloading a file. As soon as you download the file, if you don't have really good DLP at the enterprise level, your security is gone, right? So it might be, by mistake, someone might just send an email with that document, and you don't know. So a good way to make sure that doesn't happen is through the Sheets integration. So you can essentially export data from SAP directly into Sheets, do whatever manipulation you need, create the dashboards that your CEOs, CFOs want to see, and you're done with it from there. So that's still within secure limitations. Same thing with Salesforce. We actually do a two-way push. So for people who are doing sales operations work, I'm sure a lot of you have had people ask for help there as well. They can take data out of Salesforce into Sheets, do the manipulation that they need, and then push it back into Salesforce. All of this is done through completely secure interfaces. So it's always SSL 2.0 and everything else that you want by default as well. A couple of other examples. This is now you are using a cloud-based database system. We have BigQuery, essentially, which is GCP's answer to that. So you can take data from this cloud-based database, bring it into Sheets, let your financial team or finance team, whoever it is, do whatever they need to do to make dashboards and all of that work. And it's super simple to use, and that's kind of the way we've designed it. Yeah.
So I think earlier this year, Google had announced an integrator between on-prem SQL and
Yeah.
BigQuery. I haven't heard anything else on that.
I really like you. So this is the next slide. So yeah, so there are migration paths directly from on-premise to BigQuery as well, but one-step migration here with
I'm not talking about migrating. I'm talking about live.
live data. Yeah. So that is within the GCP cluster. You can actually do that interface as well. Within Drive, because it's a more limited scope as such, that's more data analysis, things of that nature, we've created this connector, which essentially means you can connect any of your on-premise databases, Oracle, SQL, anything, to Google Drive and Sheets, and then do all of the same things that you would do with a cloud-based system that way. So it makes data analysis a lot easier, even if you don't have the investment where you want it to be probably, which is in the cloud. I'm just making an assumption. And so that's not a barrier anymore, right? And then finally, this is my home-built, self-built slide, so you'll see what it is. But the whole point of Drive from a security standpoint is that you can create this perimeter of security the way you want it without affecting the usability of or the requirements of your teams, sales ops, finance, sales, people like that, who are not generally technically at the same level as, let's say, IT is, right? So the point is, as IT, as admins, as folks like that in the security field, you create the perimeter that you want, everything is secure, and then people can go in and play the way they want to. It's a good playground as such, right? So I'm going to end on that and hand the controls back to Ashley, who's going to talk more about work transformation.
All right, thanks, Raghu.
Thank you.
So, Raghu has walked us through how easy it is to secure and manage content with Drive, and we've seen how easy it is to transition over to. Now let's talk a little bit more about end user benefits and how Drive can really help both teams and employees be more efficient, collaborative, and productive. So do you guys remember that chat exchange from the beginning of the session with that guy looking for a file only to remember it's the wrong version, right? It doesn't really exist with our editors. There is only ever one version of a file, period, full stop, end of story. But within that version, there is a whole rich history packed into it, attached to it. So you can always see previous versions, even from just a minute ago. The changes that we track are really that granular. And so what this means for me is two things. One, you always know you're in the right version, yay. And two, it means you can never really make a mistake in our editors. So editors is the term, by the way, I use to describe doc sheets and slides. So the reason you can't really make a mistake is because everything that you've ever done in a document is still there, automatically saved in the version history. So let's say you're working on a presentation with someone, maybe he's named Raghu, and he accidentally deletes a really great slide. That's okay, because I can just go into the version history, find a previous version that had the really great slide, copy it from there, and paste it into the current version. Voila, problem solved. It is a genuine lifesaver, and personally, it helps me do better work because I don't have to worry about making a wrong change or losing information. It's all always there. So besides the assurance that you're always working on the right and the latest version, you also get to work side by side with your teammates. Now, a lot of other solutions out there, namely Microsoft, claim to offer real-time collaboration. But people are still genuinely blown away when they see how it works with us. And the reason that Microsoft doesn't do it is because they can't do it. So the technology that they first created, over 40 years ago now, limits how they can connect people to files. So the best they can do is the current check-in, check-out method that they currently have, which of course still leads to version conflicts. But with our editors, you get to truly work in real time. There's no sending documents back and forth, no worrying about different versions. You're always just in the right one together. And so what that means is you can work more easily with more people more effectively. And you don't just have to listen to me gush about my own products. Our customers see the difference too. So if you just look at these stats across the board, customers saw major improvements in connecting teams, in improving collaborations. I'm just going to point this out. That's a 99 right there. 99% of people saw improvements in team collaboration. It also helps in saving time. So all of this is real value that is directly attributable to working together on one version in real time with doc sheets and slides. So another awesome feature that you may or may not have heard of, we launched it semi-recently, is called Explore. And a really great way to think about Explore is it's like a Google Assistant baked into doc sheets and slides, and it does something slightly different in each application. So in Docs, it brings in quick access from Drive right into your side panel so you can see relevant documents right there. In Slides, it helps you quickly find images that you might want to include in your presentation, either from an online Google search or from other presentations that you've created, which I personally find extremely handy. And what you're seeing right here is how it works in Sheets. So in Sheets, it kind of works like a data analyst by your side. So it lets you use natural language inputs to show you pivot tables, charts, suggested formatting, and a lot more. And for those of us that aren't spreadsheet wizards, no one else? Okay. The rest of your organization is probably not either. And what this means is that it's hugely helpful in democratizing data analysis. Seriously, try out this feature. Now, While our editors are truly wonderful, we totally get that a lot of people are going to still want to work in Microsoft file types. And that's okay, because we've done a lot of work to make sure that Drive works seamlessly with Office. We've even gone so far as to bring our real-time collaborative capabilities to their file types. So if any of you guys were in Google Next SF back in April, anybody? No? Okay. Well, if you were there, you would have heard us announce this pretty cool feature called native editing. And that's what you're seeing here. The way that native editing works is it lets you open and edit Microsoft file types, so let's say a Word doc, in Google Docs, use all of our real-time collaborative capabilities, so work side by side with your employees, but the file type stays a Microsoft file format. So that's what you're seeing here with the .docx, right? That is revolutionary. We are literally helping Microsoft do something that they couldn't do without us, right? I think it's pretty cool. So you can also comment and assign tasks in Microsoft file types, and we also have a plugin for Outlook that lets you save attachments to Drive, add attachments from Drive, and it automatically checks file permissions before you send anything. And if you prefer working on the desktop, we've created Drive File Stream to work exactly like your traditional file server, but with a couple added enhancements, like working offline, which is what you see here, or preventing document collisions with a really neat feature called real-time presence. So real-time presence works on the desktop and in Office files to let you know if a file is safe to edit, or it warns you if someone else is currently working on the file and you getting in there would create a conflicting version. On the off chance that you do create a conflicting version, which real-time presence is trying to prevent against, it brings up both versions side by side and really easily shows you the differences so you can reconcile it right away. So this is just another example of how we bring our real-time collaborative capabilities to the Microsoft environment. All right, another big collaborative feature that Raghu kind of touched on from a security point of view is shared drives. And the best way I like to think about shared drives is it brings the ownership to the team level. So we can kind of look at how this works if we talk about what happens when someone joins a team and what happens when someone leaves a team. So let's say you have a new hire, you want to onboard them. What do you typically do today, right? You kind of throw a bunch of files at them and ask them to read through all of them, right? It's not fun. But with this, what you can do is just add them to the shared drive, and as soon as they have access, they can immediately get to all the files they need that are in that shared drive so they can ramp up right away. Now, conversely, what that means is as soon as an employee leaves, you're not scrambling to find all of the content that they individually own, right? How often when someone gives their 2 weeks are we like, all right, send me everything you've ever done for our company, right? You don't have to worry about it with shared drives because everything still stays with the shared drive. The ownership really gets up-leveled to that team level. All right. So now let's talk about some individual efficiency features. The most important one, the one we kind of started talking about at the beginning, was how important it is to find a file, right? So with Priority in Drive, which is powered by Google's advanced AI and machine learning, you get help with just that. So the way Priority works is it takes all of these signals from your daily work, just things that you do on a normal basis. So it looks at which documents you open, when you open them, how often you open them, who they're shared with, are there associated comments or action items, and on. And it uses those signals to figure out which documents you're most likely to need right now, and then it serves them up to you proactively. And we've seen that this feature works remarkably well. So for our users, it's been shown to cut search time by 50%. That may or may not sound like a lot to you, but research shows that the average employee can spend up to 20% of their time searching for files. So if you think about it at an individual employee level, with Priority, you could help them save up to 4 hours in a given work week. That's pretty incredible. And just think about the effect that that would have on your broader organization. Now, on the off chance that Priority doesn't suggest the file that you're looking for, right? It has a 50% hit rate. There's something else that we're kind of known for. You might have heard of it. Any guesses? Search? Yeah. Search. It's kind of synonymous with our name. So search is our bread and butter. And it's a critical part of any content management solution, right? So with our search, you guys remember that mental gymnastics slide I showed at the beginning? With our search, you're searching one place across all of your content. And you can search by name, by file type, by owner, by person shared with, by date edited, by contains action item, and on and on and on, to the point that most people I know, even customers, and definitely myself, just stopped using folders altogether. We don't need to, right? Our search is so easy and effective. It's just faster that way. So another feature that can be used for search is metadata. So admins can create metadata categories like contract or engineering design that consist of the properties that are relevant for that category. And then end users can apply those categories to any file that they have edit access to. Managers of shared drives can also create metadata categories, or they can select from existing categories that they want to enable for their shared drive. So altogether, metadata makes it even easier to organize files and folders, if you still even need to use folders, and to help you just find what you're looking for faster. So the last thing I want to mention in this front is workflows. So not only do we have a lightweight approval feature that makes sending and getting approvals on documents a breeze, we've also integrated with partner solutions like K2, Nintex, DocuSign to help streamline workflows with your existing tech. And this is a huge area of investment for us. A lot more is coming when it comes to workflows, so much so that we actually now have our own dedicated team, our own product team that's working just on workflows. So watch out for a lot more to come there. So that's kind of it for core content. Hopefully you can now see a little bit better how Google Drive now completely embodies enterprise readiness, how we're easy to transition over to in terms of cost, migration, adoption, and interoperability, and how we can help supercharge collaboration in teams and also maximize individual efficiency and hopefully help you improve your profitability. So that's all we have for you. We have about 10 or so minutes, I think, left for questions. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great question. June, should I?
Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, the question is, we talked about having. Oh, sorry. You have a mic? Go ahead. Oh, okay. The question is, we talked about not having access to client data by default, but so the question was, what about the machine learning algorithms and the AI that's built into products like Drive, et cetera, on the Google side? So yeah, that's a good, very good question. I'll answer it in two ways, and hopefully one of them, if not both, will resonate, right? So the first one is all our machine learning algorithms are containerized. So they come in pre-trained, but then they learn from within that container itself and don't push that data back into Google at all. So we don't learn from what's happening in any individual tenant on the enterprise side. It gets better, of course, because that's how ML works. It's essentially Bayesian, right? But we don't get to benefit from what we've learned from your tenant as such. The other side of it is just to make sure that it's absolutely secure. It's also in our contracts. So if anything goes wrong, you have all the legalities in place so that that's protected. Right? Does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
I'll just add a couple of things. The way I think about it is the only reason that even the robots look at your data is for two reasons. It's to either help you be better at your job, so things like priority and drive, like he said, it's scanning all the things you're doing, but it's contained and it's only serving it up to you. But then the second reason is to protect against abuse. So if you think about how widespread Drive is, we need to scan documents just to protect against abuse of our platform. But again, that's contained, right? And so those are the only two use cases where it even happens, is to make your life better or easier in some way, or to make sure that nobody's abusing the system.
And one last thing is, if we do access the system, or if one of your vendors accesses the system, let's say you put in a support ticket and you need help from somebody at Google, then we announced, I think, about 5 months ago, something called access transparency reports and logs. So you have full access and transparent access to audited logs of everything in the system, so that even if, let's say, somebody from support goes in and tries to help you out, that is logged at all times, so you can go in and check. so that nothing is not logged as such, and it's audited.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
Another thing you guys mentioned at the next conference was additional sharing capabilities coming specifically to shared drives
Yep.
at the subfolder level. I know
Yep.
that was coming roughly around the end of this year. Is that still on track, or can you guys make any comments to that?
So yeah, subfolder sharing is our most requested feature. We hear you. It is on track for, I don't think the end of this year, but Q1 of 2020 now. Sorry. We want it to.
Is Drive Enterprise going to be bundled in with like G Suite for Business or like a full suite of apps, or is it, how much overlap is there between what currently exists and what is covered in Drive?
Yeah, so they're completely different offerings, actually. So G Suite has its own set of SKUs, Basic, Business, and Enterprise, right? Business is what I think you're just talking about. Drive Enterprise is a separate kind of entry point into the G Suite world for people that aren't interested really in changing their mail client. So I think I might have said this at some point, but the way I like to think about Drive Enterprise is it's actually identical to G Suite Enterprise minus 4 key applications that G Suite has. So it does not have Gmail, Calendar, Meet, Hangouts, or Chat, or what was previously called Google Plus is now Currents. So those are not in Drive Enterprise, and that's like really the only difference between them. You want to add anything?
No, I think you got it.
Go for it.
Hi, I work for an online marketplace based out of Brooklyn. We're already a Google shop, but we're pretty entrenched also in the Atlassian suite, like Jira and stuff. Can you talk about connections between like Confluence, Jira, and Drive?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Atlassian built a G Suite app to make that integration happen by themselves. So that's available. You should try it out. Hopefully it's good. It wasn't built by us. But it is one of the things that, one of those requests that come in more and more. So like Ashley mentioned, we have a new team that works on, that's specifically targeted on workflows. So a lot of these requests are going to that team and to our integrations team as well. So yeah.
And I'll just say that, are we being like given
No,
notice?
I think it was the
Oh,
screen went off.
sorry, that's my fault. I guess we're just gonna go with it. Okay. Oh no. Okay. So what was I even going with that? Okay, what I was going to say is that you should check out our G Suite updates page just to keep tabs on beta announcements or alpha announcements, because if that's something you're really interested in and we're coming out with those solutions, you might want to get in on an alpha and a beta to like really have your feedback heard. So just keep an eye on that page.
Also, thank you for the trust with your business. Appreciate that.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Yes, sir?
Just so I understand this correctly, so can two people collaborate on the same spreadsheet if one is using Google Sheets and the other is Office 365 Excel simultaneously?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the way that it works is that it opens up the Excel file in Sheets, and so you can connect and use those those real-time collaborative capabilities in our environment. So we're kind of almost real-time transitioning it back so that it stays that file type in the storage kind of container. Make sense?
Sorry, one more. I might be confused. Can you briefly describe the difference between shared drive and Teams?
So shared drives is 4 teams.
Oh.
So you might be confused because it used to be called team drives.
Okay.
It has now been rebranded to shared drives. So yeah, that's the
I think
distinction.
there's a question right at the end somewhere. No? Any other questions? No?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.